It's really crazy to think that if I didn't check out the first episode of this series, I would be missing out on one of my favorite experience with the summer 2019 anime season. I loved this episode, I've loved all 6 episodes at this point, and to be halfway through the story, it just feels so satisfying to see how much we've learned with these characters, but still have that mystery of why they all ended up on this ship and what's the connection, the thread that's holding them together, and the mystery that surrounds them. Because obviously more than just bad parenting, because there are some parents, see Aries' mother and just how much she loves her. It's weird, you just know there's some lingering connection, but you don't know exactly what it is, but they're all growing as a really close group of friends and family, and it's interesting to see where it could go in the future and just how much I'm enjoying this experience overall. Before we jump into all the Lugar as well as Luca content, I do want to make a quick mention to the end of the episode where we got everyone's kind of sitting around chatting about what's going on, and then there's the bombshell of how it seems like, Aries has this photographic memory, she would know if someone was in her class, and then dramatic shot, look at the evil eyes, oh my god, is Shars doing something horrible? Is he finally, do we have the traitor revealed? And I don't think so. Every time this show has put the focus on someone being like, this is it, this is the evil bastard who's been manipulating the strings, it feels like within the next episode it's like, oh no, this was just a misunderstanding. Honestly, someone like Aries has more of a chance at being the traitor than someone with a dramatic close-up shot being like, we got him boys, we finally got him. We don't know who this traitor is, and I feel like the more emphasis we put on someone, the less likely they are to be the traitor. I think that's actually the importance of the show, is how they keep making us feel like the traitor is the most important aspect, but at the same time, I think because it's so predictable that when someone does get kind of that close up or like, can't be them, they're just making it too obvious. I think they're trying to bait you into making you just think about that, when the true mystery is why they all ended up on this ship, why they all were potentially trying to be assassinated, things like that. That's the true mystery that people can't kind of predict and kind of piece together, while we put our focus on the simple things of, it seems like we have a traitor on the ship, but it could be such a simple thing, or maybe it does kind of connect to the grand picture. But I think that's kind of interesting how they kind of execute this, where we keep thinking, oh, it's so predictable, they put the focus on someone here, but really the main mystery is why this all happened. And I think that's what's really interesting, what keeps me hooked on this nonetheless. So episode 7 will be interesting for sure, because they definitely gave dramatic eyes, and I look forward to seeing just the resolution and where that's going to go. But in terms of the Lugar as well as Luca content, I don't think too many people are going to be surprised that it was personal and he wasn't, the traitor and things like that. I saw a lot of people say that in my comments. I've seen a lot of people just online say that. I said it last week. It seemed personal, not something driven by he was the one trying to screw them over from the start. And I thought it was actually pretty interesting to see what the personal motivation was to try to kill the son of a politician. And it seems like his brother was a reporter, a journalist, he was investigating something maybe he shouldn't. Looked like suicide, but clearly we know it wasn't suicide. And I thought it was pretty interesting because at first I was like, okay, it was something just simple corruption, politician stuff, and that's what drove him to do this. But by the end of the episode, you're like, why would a politician do that? He must have uncovered something that was a lot bigger, which obviously connects to what their current situation is at this moment, which I quite like. But I think it does make sense for Lugar to do what he did, because the only person who ever treated him like somebody was his brother. His parents literally said, why couldn't it have been you, when they found their brother dead? Like, that's horrible, but you can understand like why this would push someone over the edge and try to take back what obviously they lost, because obviously he can't bring his brother back, but he can take something away from the politician who did, take away his heir and give him nothing and make him hurt the same way he's currently hurting. But the kind of twist that Luca's actually intersex, and that actually drove a wedge between him and his father, so actually his younger brother is the one who is the heir, I thought was an interesting curveball, because for intersex, they both develop both with male and female workings and things like that. As we see, Luca has a female chest, but also has male genitalia down below. So it's interesting how that, because his father didn't know that. He didn't know that, and then when he got a checkup, it was kind of revealed, and we learned that he's the type of person that if he knew that before, he never would have put him in the public spotlight at a doctor's, things like that. And I think it's interesting how similar both Lugar as well as Luca are, where they both were shunned by their family, and how that kind of standstill of a gun pointed towards someone's head and him just exposing everything and not even being ashamed himself of being who he is. He feels like he identifies as male, that's what he wants to pursue, but if people look at him as female or male, it doesn't really bother him. He doesn't personally care. The thing that does bother him is how bad his family treats him, and I think you can understand where that's coming from. As in this episode, once the air is kind of cleared up, he basically makes fun of people, you know? He'll basically act feminine to kind of get the boys all riled up. He'll kind of play feminine with the other girls. He'll just kind of bounce back and forth in a way to just play it up because he feels comfortable and safe with his current company. He's not ashamed of who he is, and I think that's actually pretty sweet and really shows the difference of authors who want to be tasteful with content and those who just want to make jokes. This actually felt like a close group of friends and family, and I think just the development of where they went, it actually shows just how important that was, versus when he was at home, he probably felt quite ashamed. And I think just that whole conversation, the back and forth, Lugar thinking he's lying, just trying to worm his way out of this situation, but then when everything is out and open in the air, it's like, holy shit, this isn't going to do what he thought. Thinking it's basically destiny that he found the gun, he found the politician's son, and he can finally get revenge, make it so he doesn't have an heir, to then the shattering realization that not only will revenge do nothing for you, you should try to pursue it like your brother did, do something like journalism and try to expose what truly has happened. Maybe you'll find your answer as we come back home. I love just seeing that standoff and the dialogue between them because it could have went so many ways. And I love how it wasn't like they just stopped this conversation because of the incoming wave that was going to take them away. They pretty much settled their beef before that happened because it was just shattering realization that someone like Lugar finally thinking that he can get his peace, that his brother's death will be able to have that same pain inflicted on the ones who took him, and then just nothing. You can't do anything. I mean, I guess you could kill the little brother because that's the heir, but at this point, why would he want to do that, as clearly Luke has kind of opened his eyes and opened his heart a bit more. And I thought that whole dialogue sequence was so great, especially because the characters were just watching from a distance. They rarely said anything. There's a couple of lines from Ares, there's a couple of lines from Kanata, but for the most part, it was just back and forth between two characters and then the tidal wave. And I thought that was great because not only does it mirror Kanata's kind of backstory where he kept losing people, he couldn't grab on to people, he was weak, he just couldn't save the person closest to him, and then you ultimately see that all those years of working his muscles allowed him to overcome something he couldn't in the past, and just seeing that resolution, it just felt like it was a really solid episode all around. The dialogue was tight, it felt like there was emotional weight behind everyone's words, and you just felt like Lugar as well as Luca were just kind of looking into a mirror and seeing themselves and just seeing how painful each other's lives have been, and just, I think that was the perfect route to not only explore Lugar but also Luca quite a bit, and I think it'll be fun to see where they'll go in the future now, because Luca, this is what Luca's wanted, just a group of people who he didn't have to feel ashamed, didn't have to, worry about who he is, and could just be himself. And I love what he says in this episode. He's like, I'm just me, I don't really care what people view me as, I personally identify as male, but it is what it is. All he wants is to just not be judged, because that's just how he was born. He can't change how he was born, and I loved that. It just felt like such great development, and I think it was a believable reason for why Lugar would drop the gun and ultimately would kind of look at him as a friend and no longer an enemy, because he was fueled by pointless rage. And the fact that Kanta actually trusted him to keep the gun, because yeah, in this situation you probably want someone who has some form of weapon so they can keep them safe. So I think the whole idea of trusting him with that firearm, I think it was such a nice moment, and you could see the just hope in his face. He lit up, he smiled, because their captain trusted him after everything that just happened, and it felt like there was a reason for them to trust. He wasn't swinging the gun at them, he swung it at Luca, and you understood why he overcame that. I think it was a really solid development overall. I just love the idea that this show is so personal. It's all personal stories. They're connected somehow. There's this lingering thread that we don't know why it's happening. Was it experimentation? What are the families doing? We know they have some doctors within the whole group of family members, but then you got people like Ares' mother who just seemingly are just nobodies. It's just interesting to see how there's this lingering thread and they're all trying to piece it together. Kanta especially. Why did they all end up on the ship? Why did they all end up in space? What is the common thread connecting them? But at the same time, as you have that question lingering, you're just learning with these characters and growing with them. So as the viewer is watching, you kind of feel like everyone's just becoming friends and family. Of course, each episode, there's usually someone you're keeping your eye on, being like, oh, that seems a little shady. What's going on here? So of course, you have that going on, and that's going to be like, okay, we can't trust them right now. But by the time the episodes wrap up, you're like, okay, it feels like everything's okay again. We have a goal, we have a destination, no one's shady anymore, but then they'll give you side eye with another character. I just love the idea that space is so important in the sense of setting the tone, setting the atmosphere, giving these characters a hopeless situation, but also an environment to match their personal drama, But at the end of the day, it's all about who these characters were in their past and who they want to be in the future and how the present will lead to that future. And I love that. I just feel like this cast of characters, they all come from so different backgrounds. Clearly, their backgrounds link up more than they realize, but at the same time, they are so different. And because of this unfortunate situation, they're all growing in such a really interesting way that I feel like those tropes that you look at in episode 1, hell, maybe even episode 2, most of the characters, they aren't that trope anymore. They developed, and that's what I was saying in my episode 1 review. The setting plays a huge factor in a trope becoming something so interesting, and because they're lost in space, we're seeing characters like Ares, we're seeing characters like Kanata, Luca, Lugar, they're all lighting up and becoming something so interesting, and I think just the mystery of how they're going to get home and why they were sent here in the first place continues to grip me and will continue to grip us for the remainder of this series. However, at the same time, the most important thing is the personal drives to these characters, and I absolutely love it. I think there was some great music in this episode, especially with the stanza with the gun drawn. I thought it just really captured that complex atmosphere, and when they had to go no longer widescreen, the wave was coming in, I thought this episode just looked beautiful, kind of captured that hopeless atmosphere, but also hopeful atmosphere, because Kanata did come in with a pretty good plan, didn't just jump in like he was some dumbass. No, he had the proper equipment so he could jump in, hurt himself a little bit, but then also pull them up to safety. And I thought that was absolutely great. I thought this was just a very pleasant episode. It just felt so solid, definitely top 3 of the series so far for me. I really thought this was a great episode overall, but what did everyone think? For manga readers, how far are we into this adaptation? Are we about halfway through the manga at this point in time? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Anime originals, same thing. Let me know whatever you're feeling. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy, and also hit that subscribe button if you're happy new. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.